Bonjour, mon nom est Français, HUBERT. Je voudrais vous parler
Darby's heresy. Dispensationalism. In 1930, John Nelson Darby was a British theologian and a key figure in the Plymouth Brethren movement in England. He popularized and formulated their doctrine known as dispensationalism and taught it widely throughout the United States and Europe. The movement began in 1827 in Dublin, Ireland, under the influence of a small group of people, of whom John Nelson Darby, a defrocked Anglican priest, became the central figure, accompanied by Anthony Norris Groves, often considered another founder, Edward Cronin, John Bellett, and Francis Hutchinson, who formed the inner circle of the movement. The sect quickly became divided, and as early as 1848 one of the first schisms occurred over differences of opinion between John Nelson Darby and Benjamin Wills Newton, another Plymouth leader. This schism led to the formation of two main branches, the Narrow Brethren and the Broad Brethren. The Narrow Brethren, this group adopts a strict approach, rigid discipline, and strict control over fellowship with other believers. The Broad Brethren, this group is more flexible in fellowship with other believers and interactions with outside churches. Further divisions within the two groups did not fail to appear over time. But back to the doctrine of dispensationalism, it is a multifaceted heretical system, which among other things, divides human history into different periods or dispensations, during which God deals with humanity in distinct ways. The system is based on a literal and fundamentalist interpretation of the Bible in the strict sense, and is often associated with a pre-tribulationist eschatology. The proponents of the dispensationalist doctrines do not agree among themselves, but for many, human history is divided into 7 major periods. For others, the number of periods varies according to theologians. These periods would be: innocence, before the fall of man in the Garden of Eden; conscience, from the fall to Noah; human government, from Noah to Abraham; promise, from Abraham to Moses; law, from Moses to Jesus; grace, from the resurrection of Jesus until the end of time; millennial kingdom, millennial reign of Christ after his return. Each dispensation is seen as a period in which God tests humanity in a particular way, with specific responsibilities for humans and judgments for failure. A central tenet of dispensationalism is fundamentalism, that is, the strict, literal interpretation of the Bible. What is written is what is to be understood and only what is to be understood. If the Holy Scripture says that God created the universe in 7 days, it is because he created it in 7 days of 24 hours, because God can do everything. If the Bible states that God created animals according to their kind, it is because all animals were created from the beginning according to their kind and that no other animal species can come from them afterwards. From there flow other fundamental teachings such as the distinction between Israel and the Church, another of the key doctrines of dispensationalism, namely, that there is an important difference between Israel, the Jewish people, and the Church, Christians. For dispensationalism, the Jewish people have specific promises compared to Christians who would come second, and particularly insists on the prophecies concerning Israel and the end of time. The dispensationalist doctrine is also strongly linked to premillennialism, a heresy according to which Jesus Christ would physically return to earth before the millennial reign, and therefore before the day of the Lord and before the sounding of the 7th trumpet, which was to announce the coming of the Lord. He would restore and re-establish the Jewish nation in all its power, and the secular nation of Israel would be converted entirely. Another fundamentalist feature of the doctrine is the belief in the pre-tribulationist rapture, according to which the church would be taken up to heaven before the beginning of the Great Tribulation, which would last 7 years. Thus, and contrary to the teaching of Christ, Christians would avoid persecution and would enter heaven directly, before descending to live in the millennial kingdom. Darby undertook a translation of the Bible known as the Darby version with the intention of supporting his doctrine and making the scriptures as fundamental, literal, as possible. The best known version is the French version. Criticism. Dispensationalism has been widely criticized by other theological schools of thought for its rigid division of biblical history, its literal interpretation of prophecy, its fundamentalism, and its separation of Israel from the Church, which many theologians consider to be unfounded by a coherent reading of Scripture. Influence. The doctrine of dispensationalism, however, became particularly influential in evangelical movements originating in the United States, from where it penetrated France through biblical seminaries and the publication of the Scofield Bible, annotated according to the principles of the dispensational heresy. Despite its criticism, dispensationalism has influenced many denominations and has played a role in the way many Christians now perceive the end times, particularly in terms of contemporary world events related to Israel, the rise of Christian Zionism, and discussions of the apocalypse and the return of Christ. In summary, dispensationalism is a sectarian system that divides biblical history into distinct periods and places particular emphasis on the distinction between Israel and the Church, on the events preceding the return of Christ and the rapture of the Church in a manner contrary to the teaching of Holy Scripture.
Que Dieu vous bénisse.